This week's scripture comes from the Old Testament book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 1, and also Matthew chapter 3, verses 1 and 5 through 7. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. From ancient days, we have received stories of those who have embarked on great quests. In mythology, we have the example of Jason and the Argonauts who went on a quest to find the Golden Fleece. Odysseus was driven to explore many strange lands on his way back from the Trojan War. From his great quest comes the word Odyssey, which itself describes an epic and torturous journey. Alexander the Great, a Greek king, explored much of Egypt, Asia Minor, and India late in the 4th century BC, conquering wherever he went. About 1000 AD, the Vikings, led by Leif Erikson, sailed across the North Atlantic, and became the first Europeans to discover the North American continent. Nearly 500 years later, Christopher Columbus made his more famous journeys rediscovering the New World. Before any of the explorers recorded in secular history, in the 21st century BC, a man named Abram set out on a journey, taking his family with him. It was a long and arduous journey to Canaan, which centuries later would be known to the Israelite people as the Promised Land. Throughout the history of human exploration, there have been many motives that have caused people to leave their homes in search of new lands. Some have been driven by hunger and oppression. Some have gone in search of gold and treasure. Some have set out to conquer and subdue. Others have gone simply for the sense of adventure and discovery. Though some of these motives may have formed a part of Abram's decision to leave the comfort of his family's home in Haran, our reading from Genesis gives a different reason. Abram was following a call from the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you." If it had not been for that call from the Lord, Abram may never have pulled up his roots once again and set out for a land that he did not know. His family had moved many times in the past, and they were settled where they were. They did not want to go anywhere. But this spiritual motive for Abram's journey sets him apart from so many of the travelers who have journeyed out into the unknown. He is deeply connected to his God who sends him out. And as much as this chapter in Abram's life seems like the quintessential quest of the Old Testament, to call it that neglects the story of Moses' life and forgets the movement of the Israelite people from their captivity in Egypt to the Promised Land over a 40-year span. Their quest for freedom, too, was both practical, looking for freedom from slavery and new opportunities, but also it was deeply connected to their Lord. Profoundly spiritual motivations. The quests of the New Testament come in the movement of Joseph and Mary from Galilee to Joseph's ancestral home of Bethlehem, We also have the great journeys of the disciples who would become apostles on their great quest that Jesus, the Son of God himself, sent them to perform. We read about that in our brief New Testament reading. Sometimes alone in far-flung corners of the world, they were sent in the name of Christ in service of the gospel. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: go nowhere among the Gentiles, enter no town of the Samaritans, go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Upon their shoulders stands the great giant of evangelism, upon whose life work was modeled the great quests of countless evangelists of the good news of Christ throughout the ages, the Apostle Paul himself, who didn't just go to the house of Israel, but to the Gentiles and to all the world. Each of these New Testament quests has had real and concrete practical roots, reasons for why they needed to happen, but they were also spiritual quests, each begun with a conversation with God and launching great spiritual movements of unparalleled magnitude. And now, so it is for us. We stand on the threshold of a remarkable journey. A time of great change is before us. Economically, socially, spiritually, we are facing a future that is as unknown and as foreign a land as the people of Israel passing from slavery into the promised land, or Abram leaving Haran for Canaan, or the disciples' journeys of obedience to spread the gospel across new and foreign lands. I have been reading articles this week which predict a future with very few mom and pop stores and family restaurants. Big chains, Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, with their great resources, and who, along with grocery stores, are making great economic gains, will thrive. But small enterprises with very little cash reserves will not survive this period of shutdown and the slow return from closures. Small stores all along main streets all over the country will not open their doors. I have read of a future where sporting events will be held in stadiums where 2/3 of all the seating at best will be empty. Concerts, musical and theatrical enterprises, small movie theaters, private restaurants, small factories will not have the capital reserves to make the renovations and upgrades to their facilities to accommodate the new rules of social distancing and safety that we'll need to follow for the next year or so until reliable vaccines are developed. Department stores and malls, which were already an endangered species, alongside of busy town centers, downtowns, nightclubs, will either not survive economically or individuals will veer clear of them because of fear of illness and contamination from others. What changes will our church communities, our houses of gathering, our fellowship be forced to endure? What differences and changes will we be called upon to navigate? Much will be different for years. Much will be different forever. Are we ready for such a future? An unfamiliar land full of uncertainty and learning new ways of life? Even as God called Abram to venture out on his quest, just as Jesus called out his disciples and sent them out on a daunting journey through lands they had never seen, Jesus calls out each and every one of us as well. Jesus calls us to spiritually leave behind this land of comfort, of familiarity, and travel to a whole new land. It may be a long journey to get to that land until we feel settled and comfortable again in this new normal that people are talking about. But if we choose to listen to the Lord's call and take that journey with him alongside of us, as did Abram, as did the disciples, the Lord will be with us every step of the way. We will find our heavenly Canaan. We will find a fertile soil in which to plant our seeds. Despite change and transition and unfamiliarity, the gospel remains the good news. Our challenge to live with that gospel truth and to spread the good news, as the disciples did, that God so loved the world that he sent his Son for us all, does not change, despite all the chaos and change that surrounds us. We are called upon in this time and in this place to embark on a quest into an uncertain future. A future that, if we maintain our faith in our gracious God, we will bring hope and goodness to the lives of others and live strong, hopeful lives full of victory ourselves, despite the chaos, the new territory, and the uncertainty.